So I'm gonna preface this, but I said this all the time, yo.
Yeah.
Like I was being serious. Like you're an anomaly. So like I want to preface this video with this because I feel like not a lot of people could do what you can do, and that's like a good thing though. Like I'm like bigging you up a little bit.
Yeah.
So like just to kind of give the backstory, we was talking about it before. Being in tune with your body. So this doesn't necessarily equate to like training, but it's just something that always blew my mind.
Right.
So like I'd be coaching a class or coaching an athlete or something. You're training or whatever. You run a 40. I just clock your 40 messing around. I look at the clock, look at you, and you're like, oh, it's probably like a 4.64. And I look at my watch. It says 4.64. I'm like, yo, you're bugging.
Yeah.
That always blew my mind. But then I'm like, yo, you're in tune with your body. Like you know what certain speeds and certain reps feel like.
Yeah. I think that's funny. I still remember that moment. I think that's what track like honored me with. Because everything's objective. Like, you know, I know when I'm in shape to jump 25 feet, when I'm in shape to jump 26 feet. I know when I'm not there, and like my training is a reflection of where I'm at. So everything I do is like numbers. And because of that, that's why I know exactly when to apply intensity, and when I don't apply it, what the time is. Like, I know exactly how to run to hit a certain time and when not to, because of pacing too. Like in track workouts, sometimes you need to run a 200 at a 27 pace. And it's like, a lot of people are like, how do you run 27? But I know how to do that.
Yeah.
Like, there's like different ways I've practiced for that moment.
Yeah.
Where like when it hit, I was like, at 4.64, you're like, what? Like, I knew exactly the time though. It's like crazy.
And what I appreciate about that and the way you use it is I think over time, your training has changed over time because you've grown more in tune with your body, and you felt different ways that would benefit you more, which maybe would be different from what you previously did. You know what I mean? So like, I'll be perfectly honest and full forward. You were long jump champion. What year is that?
2018.
2018. So during 2018, when you were training all up into that meet, which was in June?
Yeah, end of May, June.
End of May, June. So in my corner, watching from the outside, I'm like, yo, he's doing a lot. He's doing a lot. Like,
a lot, yeah.
Yeah, and in my mind, I'm like, oh, he's doing too much. He's doing too much. But what I didn't know at the time was how in tune you were with yourself. So like, if you were truly doing too much and you were truly like overtraining yourself, it probably wouldn't have been as successful as a meet as it was. Yeah. But like, because you understood your body and you understood what you could and couldn't do, and you understood maybe how to dial down or taper off up until the meet, and or ramp your nervous system up at the right time. So when you hit that meet, when you hit that runway, you was at your peak. Yeah. So like, what would you share with like a younger athlete, more so in the individual sport? Because I think this is really applicable to like track and field or something that's individual. What would you share with them to like be in that position to understand yourself? Because you were doing a lot. You had like coaches. You were working with Rich. You were working with different other coaches. But a lot of the training you were doing on your own. Yeah. Which is pretty cool, because that makes it almost more of your success. Yeah. You know what I mean? You did that. Obviously, you're working out with the team, track events, but you was doing stuff on your own. So like, what advice would you give? This is like the longest-winded question ever.
Yeah. I guess the first thing is that like, the fact that I did work out by myself, and that's the reason why I got into track, because it was like, this is individual, this is you don't have to worry about anyone else technically. Yeah. And it gave me the opportunity to learn myself more. And I'm not gonna say that I came to that conclusion to train less and be more intense right away. I think it came through injury. So when you saw me training, I ended up 3 months before I jumped 26 feet, I pulled my hamstring. And I'm like, I don't know what that's from.
I think moments like that kind of fueled my thoughts. Like, he's doing too much.
I'm like, the reason why I pulled my hamstring, there's a reason behind it. And I figured I was training a little bit too much. And I was lifting too much. So I backed away from lifting. And in my case, as a track athlete, there's no real reason for you to lift heavy. That's my opinion. Maybe at some point in your training, you can. But I backed away from that. But I would say the way I came to, training less would be injury, learning, and realizing that after the injury, when I came back to training off rest, I felt really good. And I'm like, wait, this feeling, I should be feeling like this all the time.
Fresh.
Like, there's no reason not to feel good. Yeah. And it makes training better, and you get more out of your training session, you feel better, like emotionally, mentally, and you don't doubt yourself like, oh, I might get hurt because I'm overtrained. Everything just feels better. But the difficult part for any athlete listening to this is being disciplined enough to not go into the gym every day or not to go out to the track, and to be confident that your ability will take you there. Like, you don't have
That's
to
huge.
always reassure yourself through training.
That's huge.
Which is what I got away from. Like, I always would think, like, if I'm taking this day off, like, nah, I'm gonna get worse.
I should be doing something.
I have to sweat, I have to grind.
But the biggest thing is, like, you are doing something. Like, you're recovering from what you just did.
Right.
So one of the best quotes, I think it was Mark Ripito, which is, it's funny, you just said track athletes shouldn't lift that heavy. Mark Ripito's all about the weight room. But one of my favorite quotes I got from his book was like, you don't get stronger from lifting weights, you get stronger from recovering from lifting weights. So it's like implementing recovery into your program is like huge, and absolutely necessary, as you just said. You know. But to switch gears a little bit, like I think this is important for athletes, especially younger athletes and minds that might not be the most mature yet, and kind of unfortunately suffer an injury. I never wish injury on anyone, but you suffered a pretty catastrophic injury. Same as Kevin Durant. Exactly. Same,
ruptured Achilles.
Ruptured Achilles. So coming back from that, it's huge again to be like in tune with your body, because you're obviously going through PT, physical therapy, but you're not in the office 24/7. You're in the office an hour, 2 hours tops, and the other 22.
One time a week sometimes. Too,
so the other, you're on your own. So if you don't know yourself and understand yourself, that recovery process is going to be pretty difficult. And if I'm not mistaken, you're back on that tough tread hitting 26 again, right? So like you essentially are right back to where you were before that unfortunate moment. So in terms of that, well, how would you talk to someone who is going through a similar situation? How do they trust themselves to be in tune with themselves, to get themselves back to where they should be?
I would say when you get injured, there's going to be the first moment you're going to be very unsure because it's new territory. So the best thing to do is ask a lot of questions and put your faith and trust in someone else who's a professional. Learn as much as you can for like 6 months. That was what it was for me, like 6 to 8 months. And I'm still learning now, but really absorb for 6 to 8 months where you're like not really in charge. And then after that, you'll be able to gain a little bit of knowledge of how to manipulate your workouts and what feels good, what doesn't. And with the Achilles, for me, like specifically, as I would always just feel and listen to my body. So if I knew something was really achy, all right, I'd back off today. But what's a little weird with the Achilles is that blood flow does help a lot. So never doing nothing wasn't an option. Like, I would always have to either walk, get a little bit of mobility work in, and always like move the ankle, because if not, like, it'd stiffen up even more. But for injury too, like, you do want to facilitate blood flow for healing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was huge for me, blood and walking. I would walk a lot, and never, because especially with the Achilles, there's a feeling of stiffness in the ankle, and if you don't move it, like, you'll really start to doubt yourself. Like, do I even have a leg? Like, it doesn't feel right.
That's
you know
wild,
what I mean?
Man. That's wild.
So you have to constantly, even now, like in the morning, I'll wake up and it just doesn't feel right. But when I get blood, it's like, okay, all right. So my biggest thing is just trust someone who's a professional and be okay with not doing the most every single day. But know that you probably need to get blood flow, so moving is important. But you don't want to tax the actual place of injury too much at all. And you only touch high intent. For me, I was only touching high intensities few and far between. And I would say with a leg injury like of that severity, for me, the way I stimulated my nervous system was through like heavy lifting of other sorts. So like I would heavy bench just to get that benefit of the nervous system being taxed, but still obviously not, taxing the leg itself. But I'd still get the nervous system benefit. That's how I would think about it.
Did you do anything different specifically in terms of your diet? Did you pay attention to things more so than before, or was it kind of just like, look, I'm gonna try to eat clean, and like that is what it is? Like, any specific areas that you kind of focus more on, or not really?
Well, I mean, I always say I'm conscious of my diet. I'm not gonna say I'm freaking the best person with the diet, but I would say I try to stay away from like drinks, alcohol, like too much sugars in the drink either. I'm always pretty much drinking a lot of water. And I would say my diet's usually clean. I wouldn't say I switched up too much, but I did read a study saying that post-surgery, like, you would need to supplement a lot of vitamin D3 because there's a significant amount of loss in that. So I was taking like 8,000 IUs for like maybe like 3 or 4 months after surgery because I read that's pretty, you know, helpful. Other than that, though, I don't think I really changed up too much, though. Yeah, with the diet, at least.
Got you.
Yeah.
Got you. That's dope, man.
Yeah, man. I would just say for any athlete, like, it's okay not training all the time. And if you were to take like two cultures, like taking the US culture versus like European culture, you'd see a significant difference in terms of how they train. And track's a good place to look at it. For me, it's, you know, obviously most significant to me, but like the US sprinters and US track runners will train like maybe 5 to 6 times a week. And in Europe, like a seasoned athlete over there probably only trains like 3 times a week. And they're doing like little volume. And if they hit like a fastest time or biggest lift in the gym, they shut it down. Because they're big like proponents of like, if you hit a PR, shut it down.
Shut it down.
Because your nervous system just experienced something that it's never experienced before, and you got to just
You know, it's funny, man, because like in terms of track and field events or sprinting in general, your nervous system when you hit a PR is going through similar, obviously different, but similar as when you hit a PR in the weight room.
Right.
Because it's something that you've never experienced before, but a lot of people don't think of it the same way. So like if you're clocking 40s every week and all of a sudden you bust out a PR in the 40, your body never went through that speed, never did those foot contacts that fast or applied that amount of force in that short period of time. Same idea in the weight room. If you PR in the deadlift, your body never was under that load. So it's like people need to understand that those two things, there's still something your body hasn't experienced. So recovery is huge. Right? I get from, you know, we get from kids all the time in this building, can we run 40s? On Monday, Tuesday, can we time 40s? Wednesday, can we time 40s?
Right.
It's like, yo, you just hit a PR on Tuesday. Why are we timing again the next day? Like, you know, let's dial it back, focus on little things, right? And then, boom.
That's interesting too, because that's so true. I think as a younger athlete, there is a little bit more wiggle room for you to touch higher intensities more often. But anyone, I would say over the age 16, when things are really starting to develop and process hormonally and stuff like that, there's an extreme tax. If you start touching high intensities all the time, you run into danger of overtraining and feeling groggy. Like hormonally, you're just not recovering properly. So I would say anyone like who's really starting to become developed, like hormonally through puberty and just even like more experience as an athlete, you know, you have to back away from high intensity. If you can't touch it too often at least.
You just gotta know when to hit it and when to pull off.
Exactly.
So I think that's huge. And I want to finish with this, and I'm not saying it just because you're a track and field guy. But I think in terms of this topic, like being in tune with your body, I think all athletes at some point in their life, or all athletes should start in track and field before they get into their team sports. I think that's huge.
I would agree, but
you know
that's a lot of bias on my part. But
but that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying it just because of who I'm talking to, but in terms of knowing yourself, knowing how to move properly in terms of sprinting. Because think of how many times do we take any type of athlete, basketball, anywhere, we pull it onto a track and he just looks wild. Most athletic person, like LeBron James, for example, we watch him walk. Like, obviously, he's a beast of an athlete, but his running mechanics are trash. And I mean, granted, he doesn't have to be sprinting 100 meters. But if he focused more on a track and field aspect, don't you think it would benefit him on a court?
100%. And even like drill acquisition. Like, for me, I'm not saying this out of any sort of cocky way, but you give me a drill and I could probably handle it. But that's because I've been exposed to so many different movement patterns. Like you said, is key because it could translate to the court. It could translate to a different sport. But that'd be a lot of bias on my end, but I do believe track could be like a grounds for any sport. Especially at a young age.
Yeah, it's huge, man. So it's like everybody does the big things, everybody works out, everybody shows up to practice, but the things that make you great are
the little things.
The little things. This was dope, man.
Appreciate you, bro.
Appreciate the talk.
Thank you, brother.